everything I want is on the other side of resistance. Everything that I want is a little on the side of self deprivation to like pull back some of the things that I want. And again, I'm good at talking about it,
Yeah.
but it's walking it out every day. That's a whole other, that's why you need accountability. That's
Right.
why I'm men's retreat, this wild at heart thing, which I've done them before, but
Hmm.
it's amazing. It's like weeds, weeds just, you don't even have to water or like take care of. We can kill houseplants in our house, but man, we can grow weeds in our yard all day. And that's the same as habits and thoughts and all that stuff. So I'm just very aware of like all the stuff I don't want in my life grows like mad. All the things that I want in my life, I have to like intentionally do and take care of. Otherwise, I'm just going to have like a mess. So,
Are you a hardworking dad, juggling family responsibilities while dreaming of building wealth through real estate? Welcome to the Invested Fathers Podcast, where we explore how to balance investing and fatherhood. I'm your host, Kenny Johnson, founder of East West Capital. Over the past 5 years, I've been buying real estate to free up my time and secure my family's future. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Join me as we navigate the real estate world together, building wealth and strengthening our families. As my grandma always said, East West, home's best. Wayne the Man Johnson. Wayne, do you ever get man, your name is really close to Dwayne Johnson.
yes, I do. You never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? So, I've learned this trick, our little mental Jedi trick to help people remember my name always. I tell people, hey, I'm Wayne Johnson, the Pebble. And never does someone not laugh. If they don't laugh, then I seriously think that person's a psycho and I don't even want to talk to them again.
Right.
I don't think that joke's funny. Like, I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, I always tell people I'm Wayne Johnson. I'm the Pebble. The Rock is Dwayne, so he's got an extra D in his name. But I will tell you that people remember my name because I tell them that, because I'll later see people and be like, hey, there's the Pebble, the Pebble.
Yes. Dude, love
Uh,
it. You did get
yeah.
one first impression. Yeah, I usually drop the like Ken, like the Barbie doll, but then people are like, that's kind of weird. And I'll be like, Kenny Chesney, Kenny G, Kenny from South Park. And one of those normally gets a
Still stick.
reaction.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway,
I'll make it stick.
Wayne, we have known each other for a few months now. And I'm excited to share that we are on the same team in this capital raise on the Kansas City project. We actually stayed together in an Airbnb house not too long ago, and Wayne and I just became good buds. So thanks for making time today, man. Give our audience a little bit of what you're up to right now in the business
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. So in the business world, my wife and I, we've had a health and nutrition, you could say coaching, mindset, habit form, really just transformation business for 22 years. So that's primarily I call that our golden goose, but it's really a place that we have tremendous passion for. I always tell people, your health in your body is your number one asset. If it's not working, then you typically can't work and you can't create revenue. You can't be a good dad, all of that stuff. So I think there's just everything springs out of what we do in that business, and that's called Rise Champions. And the reason is, we want to help people rise up, but then the word champion actually means to be an ardent defender of someone's purpose. So you think of old medieval days, they would have the champion fight for the person. And so we just want to come alongside people and fight for their health, their mindset, to be the best versions of themselves. And then another big piece of that is financial stewardship. I grew up in a family that did real estate, fix and flips, worked on houses, bought. So I saw the fruit of real estate like right under my nose. I went and started another business, different career path, but I always had that in my mind. And so the last 5 years, I have come back, and that's how we met, to give back and really help other people come and invest in a safe place, a place that can really build legacy with some great team, great assets. And so I guess that encompasses kind of everything about my identity. Is, I always want to be someone that is a safe place that can help people in my sphere of influence, like get them where they want to go. And that's just be a really good guide for people. And then I have others that I lean on that are experts in other areas. And then legacy, building wealth, those are probably like at the forefront from a business standpoint that I love to do. And honestly, I don't ever feel like I work because they're fun. They're really helping people.
hmm Now, you're a great friend and business worker. From what I have seen in your posts on social media, which you post a lot in a good way, you have kids here and there. Every now and then there's something that is surfacing on that. How many kids do you have now?
I think eight total. Sometimes when they come to dinner, I'm like, "Hey, who are you?" And then I remember.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
How has that played in your Rise Champions and the 22 years of work with your wife? How has the dad card been something that's been challenging or beneficial? Tell me a little bit about that hat.
Yeah. I mean, I would say one of the big mission purposes around even when I started building my first business was time with family and with my kids, and really just this concept of being able to design my life. I love Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, really being able to map out where you want to go. And like we have a lot more power and control over where and what we can do than we think. And, I'm a Christian, so I'm a believer. I believe God opens up everything and it's his will be done on all those things. But I also know that there's a lot of things that I can do in conjunction with that prayer and having unity with God and do that. So as far as kids, I actually I have two kids from a prior marriage. And so it's interesting, that's something my wife and I, we speak on a lot and help people just from a blend. There's a lot of blends out there. So I was married before, had two kids, and that really drove me to start building my first business is that I grew up where my parents were around, coached teams, and very involved. And so I kind of had that foundation of like dads are around and dads are very involved and dads coach and participate, and they're not just gone and working and come home and like fall asleep in the chair. So that was always at the forefront of my mind. And then, I went just a divorce. Really, I could say that it wasn't something that I wanted or planned. I don't think anyone, they don't get married and say they want that to happen.
Right.
And so later I met my wife now. She actually had two kids. She was widowed. And so I was able to adopt her too. And then we've had four more since then.
Okay.
It's a pretty interesting journey on the blend, but so much of what I did on the front end was to create time and design my life, where now in the last 10 years, I've had six more kids into my flock. But thankfully, because of what I did way back then, because I had that vision to be a very present dad and be a dad that was involved, I'm really enjoying the fruit of all of that, even though we work and we're diligent. So much of our life is designed around raising our kids to be like the next generation and have the values and be leaders and, just do good for the world with what they're called to do.
Yeah, that's our passion here. And I hope that anyone listening feels the importance, the seriousness, the joy of doing what you just said in regards to like legacy and instilling these values, these traits into these very uniquely positioned relationship children in our lives as dads. I just started a book called The Intentional Father. He compares, these different dads, and one of them is the involved father. And I'm like, hey, this is great. And he talks about, they're at all the soccer games and they're at, making breakfast. They're just very involved, but there's not an intentional strategy or maybe focus in like how you're raising them, but you're just you're very involved. And I actually was convicted very much by that. I was like, hey, you have to do more than just be there. I think being there is a big part of it. And that like this guy is failing by any means, but I just love that idea of it's more than just showing up. Just because you have a kid doesn't necessarily make you a father in a way. I mean, unless you're fathering him. So thank you for living by, there's a lot that you said there in regards to the previous marriages and the blend and then being able to be there with your kids. Any books that you've or would recommend? I mentioned The Intentional Father. I know you've posted a few things here and there with Napoleon Hill. Maybe give some thoughts on books or outside influences that have helped you with being an intentional dad.
I really love reading the Proverbs in the Bible because I just feel like there's just wisdom pouring out of that. And it's like you can read it forever and over again, because as you go through more life, you have more experience. And then you're like, oh my gosh, wow, this is understanding something else. Reading that's something I'm intentional. I put up notes and have my boys that are older that can read that. My daughters, that's something very like prominent, like Proverbs 31 woman. and really just, letting them know like, hey, your mom is a Proverbs 31 woman, and this is all the attributes. Because when I was praying for my wife, like I was praying for a Proverbs 31 woman, and it's like the ultimate model of a wife that you should want.
Mhm.
Two other books, actually, my wife and I, there's the book by Stormy or Martin. It's The Power of the Praying Husband
Mm.
and The Power of a Praying Wife. So we've read those, but now our teens, my wife is actually having our teen son read The Power of a Praying Husband. And then we're having our teen daughter read The Power of a Praying Wife, because again, we just feel like when the marriage is strong, because we both had unequally yoked kind of marriages that weren't built on the right foundation. So it's something that when you've lived it and gone through the fire, you realize like, oh, that we could have done some other things and had different things happen. So just knowing that when the marriage is the most important, the kids benefit from that. When the kids see a unified couple, and not, we see so many times they start having kids, and then sometimes the kids take over priority for the mom, and then the husband's kind of just left down here to just be the provider and do some of the things that dads are supposed to do, but they come underneath the kids. And so that's something my wife and I were very intentional to show the kids, hey, mom and dad are here, and then you guys are here. But you guys are going to thrive, and one day you'll be married and you're going to have a wife, or you're going to have a husband. Those are the Proverbs, those books. I love, for the boys, also the book Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. I'm actually going to a retreat in Idaho in a couple weeks with a bunch of guys to do this Wild at Heart retreat. And it just talks about what's really in a man's heart and how to cultivate and get full how God created you. So anything, I try to just be like a siphon or irrigating my kids. Like anything that I'm reading, I'm trying to break it down to them and just be like, hey guys, this is what I learned. This is the things that I had to learn the hard way, and let me explain it to you.
I love that.
I'm always reading stuff. It's more caught with kids than it's taught. So they watch us more than we think.
Mhm.
And so we're always just trying to model the behaviors and the activities that our kids are just like, oh, that's what, mom and dad do. They don't just talk about it. They do it. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I will echo on the Proverbs. I saw, and we could probably talk for a little bit more on this, but the note cards you mentioned just briefly, that there's like note cards or Post-it notes.
Mhm.
You guys need to go to Wayne's Facebook and see. There are 30 blue, Post-its on this Hutch thing, and the kid is like studying them. And Wayne, you said something like the kid gets $1 or something if he can take the. Actually, why don't you explain it instead of me?
Yeah. It's kind of evolved. So that's one of the things as a dad, just have permission to be creative, and you don't have to follow some other dad's specific template, because it's connected with your kid. The other thing with 8 kids, we know that like each kid has individually, like they're all so different. It's you're just like, can't you just be a carbon copy of your brother? This would be a lot easier. And so one thing, I always like to read the Proverbs. And so at the beginning of the summer, I was just like, I'm going to start every day. I'm going to pick a verse out that really stood out to me that I think the boys would like. And I'm just going to put it as a Post-it note on this bookcase in our living room. And I'm going to tell them to read it. And so then, by the end of the summer, the whole bookcase was filled up. So then I had to start pulling them out. And I bought a little scrapbook and I started putting them in there, and I wrote some notes in there. And then in the last week or so, I was like, I gotta level up, because they're forgetting to go read this now. Like I thought I was getting the habit with their kids. So then I was just like, okay, guys, I'm putting it up here. Now I'm going to have the carrot. The carrot is, okay, I want you to read this and then tell me what you think it means. And then if you can memorize it, and after school, if you can tell me what the verse was, and like, even if it's a little fragment of it, just tell me what it was, then you're going to get $1. And, they know that like a Chick-fil-A shake out here where we live, like I said, by the time once a week, you'd have like $5, and we could go to Chick-fil-A and you could get like one of those monster shakes. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah. So far they've been attempting to do that. Our middle daughter, that's kind of with the little kids, she's even been getting in on it. She's like, can I do this too? And I was just like, of course, it's not just for the boys. Anything that's intentional and creative. And my wife and I are like, I think if anything we've seen in the last 4 years is like teaching our kids to think for themselves and use their brain
Mhm.
and not just like be told like, hey, this is how it is. And, just read this and that's the way it is. So we're always really trying to get them to read and then like tell us, what do you think of that? Like, how does that make you feel? What are your thoughts? Maybe I never thought of it that way. So to get them to push back against status quo, I think that's another thing in our house that we're always being like, no, just because it says it doesn't mean you have to do that, right? There's some fundamental truths that we
Mhm.
obey, but other things, it's just like question. It's
Yeah.
great to question things and ask and
Yeah.
give your opinion.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where when they're young, it's a lot of like, hey, this is what is right. Just obey daddy here.
Yeah.
And then as they get older, somewhere it has to become more of like, what do you think? Do you think this is good? Or is this how you believe? Or is this what daddy believes? Finding that time, I think, is key. I want to go a little bit. I've thought about the whole topic of divorced or broken marriages or something where, we talked about the relationship with your wife being here and then the kids being next. Is there, for anyone out there that has some struggling, or maybe they are divorced, or there's something where they feel like, man, this is just like, can I still be a good dad right now? And obviously there's just, every situation is different, but you are now kind of through this. And I would say like the trial and the low point, you say, I wouldn't have chosen this, it's over, it's behind you.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little into that, just to anyone out there who's maybe struggling with like, hey, how can I still be a good dad, or where can my mindset be during this maybe rough patch?
Yeah, that's so crazy. Why did I have to go through that? Because people always want to know the story. They're like, well, certainly there was something. And, you're just kind of like, well, and so I think the number one thing is forgiveness for the other side, but then also realizing that I had a log in my own eye. So there was things that I contributed to that. But then the second part is like having no guilt or shame around it. That was something to really be like, okay, I like, I'm completely forgiven. Anything that I would have done, I forgive her. And, moving forward, I'm not going to like have any baggage of like, oh, I feel bad about this or I feel bad about that. And then with the kids, I just always, it's harder to do than they say, because it's always easy to say it, but then actually to do it, just to like never talk down or bad about the other person. And even when you're just like, you want to be like, oh, I just want to I want them to know the truth. I want them to know like this is how it was. And I've seen that in business too, and there's that great, it's in Romans, I think it's chapter 12, where it just says, the summary of it is vengeance is the Lord's. And not that I wanted vengeance, but I would take vengeance as like, you want your story to be told and your truth to be like, you want people to know like your side.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to like get to a place where I was just like, God knows my side. And that's it. Like, if I'm always trying to get my side, then I'm wasting energy. I could use this creative energy somewhere else, and I'm just going to turn them over to him.
Mm-hmm.
Any business person or, something that happened in there, I'm going to be like, okay, I've done everything that I'm supposed to do on my end. And I just I'm not going to try to like talk about it or bash anyone else in that regard. And so then with the kids, I just was like, okay, I'm just going to be the most intentional, connect with them father that I can. It's just like almost like inventory and to go on a hiking trip. I'm like, what are my resources? Or like the old show MacGyver. I'm like, what do I have to work with? Okay, I got 3 days this week and I got 4 days next week. Like every 2 weeks, I had them for 7 days. And I was like, all right, I got these days and this is the time I have. This is the schedule I have. So, how can I like be intentional and maximize this? So on one hand, with I have my two older daughters, like I would say, we had some really great times in a couple of those years where we did a lot of very intentional work and connecting because of that. So there was a lot of good that came out of that season because it made me. So I would say on the flip side, when everything is going good, and it's easy to fall in your comfort zone and your kids are just kind of running around and you're just like, they're always here. Like I need to get this done. So in the back of my mind, I'm always like just checking myself going like, at one point I just like, half the month I had an empty house with just me and my dog. And I was like, I hated that. Like I'm taking nothing for granted here. Like
Right.
all this loud noises and kids not listening and me feeling like I'm chasing them around, telling them the same things 20 times. I just have massive gratitude
Mhm.
for all of it because I know what it's like to have a big, empty, quiet house. And you're just like, wait, this is not what I had planned. God prepared me because now you have a full house and a full life. But you had to take you through this season in order to equip you and make sure you're ready to be a steward for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in every trial that I can look back on, questioning financial things, job things, career things, even marriage things, I'm just like, man, that was a hard time. If we're looking at God and saying like, what is your will here? What are you trying to do? Sometimes he's very gracious to reveal it. And in this situation with what you talked about, he has made you incredibly focused and gratitude and thankful with raising your kids. So I think that's an awesome win despite the hardship. Wayne, I know your background is a lot in health. So I want to switch the topics to health. This is something for me. I have oddly, I started that book, The Intentional Father, and it just sort of caused these different things to trigger. One of them being health. And I've mentioned on the show last couple episodes how one of my big fears is being the lazy dad or the sleepy dad who's just too tired to get on the ground with our kid or go out and play soccer, whatever it is, just because my neck hurts or my back hurts or whatever it is. You've devoted a lot of your life toward health, at least with your job, but also like you have 8 kids, so your health matters to you. What are some revelations you can share about the focus of health in your life and how it's benefited you as a dad?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, health is our number one asset. If you're not healthy, you can't work, you can't play, you can't do all these things. Let's go back to the Proverbs that where there's no vision, that people perish. I always tell dads, I have like a 90-year-old vision of how I want my health to be, meaning I want to be able to ski, like snow ski with my grandkids, or it could be great grandkids at that point. And then I also want to be able to surf. And so when you think about a 90-year-old person that can ski and also pull themselves up on a surfboard and do that, then you start to work begin with the end in mind.
Right.
Then I go all the way back to how old I am now, or even when I started thinking about this, of having a vision for my future, then it starts to make the habits that I choose every day a little bit different. Because I'm like, I got to be able to do a pull-up when I'm 90. Like, how many 90-year-olds can do a pull-up? I'm like, well, I'm sure there's some, so I'll be one of them, right? And then they got to be able to squat down and, have maneuverability, and they got to be able to take care of their weight. It's got to stay lean, got to stay mobile, you got to have mental acuity, all of these things. And so I would say number one is, it's easy with little kids. I know because, we have a new baby too. So I have a 23-year-old to a 9-month-old. So it just kind of keeps me young. But I know when you have a lot of the little ones, you just kind of just like almost survival mode, like, oh my gosh, just trying to get through the day, just want them to get to bed. And so, your days get away from you. But when you have that longer term vision, it's amazing how you're like, okay, I'm going to promise myself to just do, 50 push-ups. Like I can't go to bed until I at least do 50 push-ups. I'm also going to, there's so many great books on habit stacking, but I would just encourage to like find some kind of way to start stacking some of these habits that they just become second nature for me. And it's like, I know I've done it so long. It's like, I'm always trying to think of like the new dad that's working and has so much going on. And they're just like, okay, how do I get fit? How do I get some of my energy back and all that stuff? And it's just like, everything big starts small. So just starting with some key things and not be the typical American that wants instant gratification and these quick fixes. And, it's funny. I'm just kind of, now I'm riffing, but I'm in like a supplement business too, but I kind of hate supplements. It's like, I naturally push back on anything that's like a miracle cure, or like end all be all, even in faith where someone's just like, give your life to Jesus and everything's going to change. You're going to be prosperity, healthy, and, because it's like people forget about like, no, there's something called sanctification. Like we get saved by grace, no condemnation. Like we are saved and all of that. But then there's actually a sanctification process where we want to die to our flesh. And so when we talk about products or things, sometimes I'm like, hey, I market products that actually are tools in the overall health matrix, not any one thing that's like gonna overcome you never working out and going to Chick-fil-A every day, right? And just having poor eating habits. So I can't overcome that. So that's probably the two. And we can, I can answer some more questions around it. Is I would say start small with some simple basic things. And like I love giving tips and ideas around it because like for me it's very second nature, but I know it's not. It takes about 90 days to really transform habits and really start to instill some stuff. And people see me and they're like, Wayne, you're fit, you're so disciplined. And I'm like, no, you guys, actually 9 times out of 10, I never want to work out. Like I actually have a workout scheduled here in 2 hours. And I've actually been negotiating with myself most of the morning that I'm like, do you really need to work out? Because you're going to get all sweaty. And then you have another couple Zooms after that. And then the kids are coming home. And so like I start visualizing this whole narrative. And then I'm like, be quiet. It's on the schedule. Go do it. I've never once went and like put some effort in the gym and said, oh, that was terrible. I hated that I did that.
Right. Right.
So just me, where people sometimes are just like, well, you're just a machine.
Yeah.
I'm just like, well, this machine is programmed wrong because it's trying to make me not do what I know I need to do. Like I'm as human as they come.
This is key because I have been going down maybe for over a year now, this delayed gratification, self-denial journey. You read these books, Never Give Up. The guy who was like the Marine, I can't remember his name right now, but just dig deep and just go. Like, you just have to just dig deeper and, hold on to your good and then just think of that every time you do something bad. But maybe a question is those key traits, because I found it very rewarding to just deny myself something, even like fasting. That's my most recent one.
Yeah.
Never done it before. I have done it now. And this is not a like, Kenny's great, but it was one of those things that's just like, I didn't think I could do it. I did it. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And I'm like, man, I'm so glad I did this. Obviously, I had a lot of health benefits, but could you give me some traits that have helped you this isn't like you said, the quick fix of you just take the supplement and you're good. But even that recent example about, hey, I don't even know if I want to work out today because that narrative. What is it that your mind has worked out over and over that does get you in the gym?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things like I think of like every level has a new devil. And the devil is relentless. He knows every part of my weakness and my personality. And so I think one of the things that as I've crossed over, I'm going to be 52 in January. So my wife says I'm going to be 120. She calls me Father Abraham. So I'm almost at my halfway point because
almost halfway.
I like fasting. I've done a lot of extended water fasts. We have our flesh and then we have our soul and then we have our spirit. I just, all throughout the Bible, it talks about we have to deny our flesh, and our flesh is always wanting to dominate who we are. But like when you really realize it's your spirit man that should be in control of everything. So that's one of the things I've just really tried to shift to be like, okay, what does Wayne's spirit really need? And, most of the things of my flesh are selfish things. And those are the things that are like, want me to be lazy, want me to not, want me to check out at the end of the night, want me to maybe, okay, I think I'm just going to have a glass of wine now. Oh, okay, maybe I'll just have 2. The kids are playing anyway, so it doesn't matter, right? So all these things are driven by the flesh. And so the more I can just be aware of that, aware that there's a war going on, for comfort. And then just I'm just always trying to find things. I'm not like do crazy stuff. There's people that do all sorts of crazy athletic stuff and all that, but because our life is full, I'm just trying to find things that I'm like, I know it's good for me, but I really don't want to do it. And then I just kind of continue to try to do it. Like one of the things I have a big kick. I have one of those CrossFit rowers right now. And I just tell people like, the thing I love about the rower is I actually hate it. And there's no shortcut to row, 2,500 meters. Like there's no hack, nothing I can do that will not cause pain to row 2,500 meters in the set amount of time that I'm trying to row it in. Like there's no escape hatch. So anything like that I can do to just combat my flesh and make me more of a resilient person and know that like everything I want is on the other side of resistance. Everything that I want is a little on the side of like self, deprivation to like pull back some of the things that I want. And again, I'm good at talking about it.
Yeah.
But it's, walking it out every day That's a whole other, that's why you need accountability. You know, that's
Right.
why I'm men's retreat, you know, this wild at heart thing, which I've done them before,
Mhm.
but it's amazing. It's like weeds, you know, weeds just, you don't even have to water or like take care of weed. We can kill houseplants in our house, but man, we can grow weeds in our yard all day. And that's the same as habits and thoughts and all that stuff. So I'm just very aware of like all the stuff I don't want in my life grows like mad. All the things that I want in my life, I have to like intentionally do and take care of. Otherwise, I'm just going to have like a mess. So,
Thank you for giving that. And I feel like there's so much more in the habit stacking thing. We mentioned accountability. One of my big takeaways from that was being aware, like the spirit man and the flesh man. I've not thought about that. You know, devil's on your shoulder and the angel on your shoulder.
yeah.
But just being aware, we're fighting a battle right now. And if something
Yeah.
is making you feel lazy or feel prideful or lusting or whatever it is that you feel like is your flesh fighting your spirit.
Right.
And I think if
Yeah.
we think that way more, it gives us defense, offense, we're going into battle kind of stuff. You know, you've mentioned like tips and tricks of health, but I always kind of like the question of like tips and tricks of dadding. And you've actually mentioned already a lot with like the postcards and be creative and wild at heart type of retreat. Like there's things that you're already doing, but I always like to pick people's brain a little bit and like, hey, any cool like game or strategy that's been effective that you could drop in specifically about, you know, the audience, the whole podcast that I've chosen to start has been how can busy dads who are trying to build a business and work hard still be successful in being a dad? There's kind of that work-life balance. I'm a believer that you can do both. Something in that vein that you've seen work well for you.
Yeah. One of the things with the volume of kids we have is just, you know, we're pretty intentional. Like we have family dinner where we all sit down. So I think that's some of these like mandate things of just like, no, we do this all the time. None of our kids really have any devices or anything like that too. So our teens now have phones reluctantly just because, you know, sometimes they help watch the kids. But, you know, sit down and like have that intentional time, family dinner. A great little game that I learned from another mentor friend of mine was just to go around the table and ask the kids just, you know, what was their best and what was their worst of the day. And they'll just bring up some of the funny things or different things, but also just trying to always get them to be in a safe place that like mom and dad are the best place to like reveal everything to. You know, and that's like, you know, as I now have a teen son, not as much with the girls, but like teen son, like, you know, as he's getting into that maturity, I've always told him, I'm just like, hey, if you ever hear something or see something that seemed weird or funny, or even on your, just know if you come and tell me something, I'm never going to laugh about it because I probably thought the exact same thing. So just like get into the place where your kids know that you're the ultimate safe place to bring something they could think is totally wild that they might go ask a friend or someone else. You want them to be like, oh, I feel totally safe asking my parents that. So that's another thing that we try to really cultivate with the kids. And then, you know, there's something else my wife and I do with the teens, the older ones, which are 8-year-old. We're actually bringing him into it now too, is just like a weekly check-in. And so we'll sit them down and we do it on Monday nights. And so when the little kids get back from school, and then our older two are homeschooled, but we'll do a weekly check-in where they kind of just check in on these 5 areas of their life. So their, you know, school, their spiritual, physical, their relationships, and this is really good. I should know this. There's 5 areas of their life and then they rate themselves 1 through 10.
Okay.
So like for my wife and I, we do it. We say for our business and work is the other one that we do. And so it's just a way for us to kind of check in on them.
Yeah.
And, you know, how they're participating, how's their spiritual, how's their physical, are they working out, are they eating good, are they taking care of themselves, getting good sleep, how's their school going, and then the relationships, you know, how do they feel with like relationships in the family and things like that. And then we have them write those out, and then we teach them to just go ask God for any other insight so that they can journal it out. So that's something else my wife is huge on, that she kind of champions that. And it's been also really revealing too.
Yeah. I love asking that question because there's just always new light bulbs that come on in my mind. And it shows how, I mean, like you've mentioned, every kid has their own recipe. You have 8s and are they all the same? No, of course they're not. They're all different kids. They all have different needs.
Yeah.
But some of these just little things that work for you may work for someone else as well, or they could borrow it, or at least know like, hey, part of being an intentional dad was doing this thing for Wayne. And what am I doing? I don't know.
Yeah.
My son is 8. So I'm starting to realize even more. I mean, every day there's just more opportunities to create that safe space, like you mentioned, but also kind of like, what's a pointed conversation I could have that isn't just like, hey, how's your day? Like, there's like 5 categories, like 1 to 10, that I'm sure creates some really good insight into what he's going through. Mm-hmm. Even to add one more thing to that, The Intentional Father, this book I read, it encouraged me to watch a documentary, and it was about this like prison cellmates, people that were in prison and they were having a hard time. And then when they asked some of these guys, why they're messed up, or like, how'd they get here, and all these like kind of things, the conversations they had with their dad where that trust was lost was like brought up a couple times. So even while you were talking, I was thinking about that and how important not laughing and being very engaged and sensitive, but vulnerable and open to those conversations can be so impactful, like integral. That could, like, that one time you laughed at him could just be with him for the rest of his life. If something like, kids laugh at, whatever it is. So great reminder. Thank you. Hey, Wayne. So we are raising together right now on this Kansas City deal. And I met you through this thing. So I knew Caleb, who has been on the show before, really just connected super deep with him. But through journeying through this Kansas City team, got to know you and a few other awesome dudes. What brought you into that deal? Share with the audience kind of the attraction into this specific Kansas City team deal.
Yeah, I grew up doing fix and flips, family in the business. I saw the power of real estate, but I also was not handy like my dad. I was better at building the business that I have built. I just knew the power of real estate. I knew what's possible if you had the right team and operators in the right area. And so, like I said, a few years ago, I really was on the hunt where I was like, I know that there's people that can work with the level of excellence that I work in my life and my businesses in the real estate space. And that's when I met the guys from Oak IQ. First, I was an investor. I was like, hey, I want to invest in this because I see what you guys are doing and it's really good. And then once I saw how they did that, it was just a natural for me to be, having others come look at the deal. And the Kansas City market is one of the best markets from a stability standpoint. I'm not like a big sizzle person, like, talking again about habits and long-term, aspect of life. I really liked the fundamentals of the Kansas City market. I also liked the team and then just the experience and track record they've had. So it's been really fun. And then, all the guys like yourself and others that are being attracted to it, it just, like attracts like, and we're building like a really great community around it too.
Are the investors that you're talking with right now who are rather like investing for sure with you or like engaged in it, interested? What has been some feedback on some investors say regarding Kansas City, the deal?
Yeah, even like myself, people know the power of real estate, and then you see a lot of the glitz and the glam when people talk about it, but then you're like, okay, who's actually like a really safe operator? Who's someone that I could trust? And like, who would I want my family to spend time with? Not some of the, because the industry could be a little bit like Wild West. And so for me, first and foremost, the type of investors that I have, they can see that. They're like, oh, this is actually a safe place to put some capital. A lot of the guys and gals that I have invest, they have businesses, so they're throwing off some cash flow. So, and they're invested typically in the market. They got some stuff in the market, and they're like, I would like to just move some stuff over here, and I've just never really had access to do that before. I've always wanted to, and now I can tap into that. So I'm excited to put some of my capital over there because they know just historically these type of deals in this type of market with the right people, they just beat the market, and they're like, I call it like a battleship. They're going to escort your capital to the next safe harbor and the next deal. So that's why I love it.
Cool. All right. Wayne, on our way out here, tell our audience how they can find you. I know you are doing the supplement stuff. If someone wanted to see what you're doing business-wise, how would you lead them to see what you're up to?
Yeah. So we have a webpage, champions.com, Rise Champions. Wearing the shirt, wearing the swag. Yeah, risechampions.com, or probably Instagram, Wayne Johnson _official. And then on Facebook, you can follow on Facebook as well. And I kind of post both those jointly there. So anything curious about entrepreneurship, business, any of the things we're doing, always welcome you to hit me up and have a conversation. And yeah, I love marriage, family, legacy building, all those things. So let's connect.
Cool. Wayne, thanks, man.
Absolutely.
We'll catch you later.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Invested Fathers Podcast. If you liked this episode, we would love for you to click subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate all of your hard work as a father and look forward to our next episode together.